The relationship between Poppy Playtime and its audience has been rockier than a relationship between you and your ex-wife. Going from being perceived as a cash grab kids game that would truly be the thing to resuscitate mascot horror in the cultural zeitgeist, to that exact domino effect, collectively leading us to think that maybe we were taking it for granted a little bit compared to the competition. But since their last full chapter outing, the climate around these types of games has changed drastically. Poppy Playtime Chapter 2's release was almost 2 years ago now, and while Mob Games, now Mob Entertainment, because they're making a movie, was looking to clean up their image and really put their all into Chapter 3. But in that journey, they clearly left a big market absence, one which people would try to fill with clay or whatever the hell the Rainbow Friends are made of. And as such, the bubble started to burst. Garten of Banban and Rainbow Friends went from being juggernauts for the YouTube Kids content farm industrial complex to having their relevance trickle down and lost ever so gradually, with Rainbow Friends being dead for a while now and Banban really starting to be on the way out. And for every game that comes in and attempts to grab a share of that market once again, one more nail in the coffin of the dying genre of mascot horror is added. And with the climate of what's popular shifting almost every single day, it's gotten really hard for anyone to keep up. Slowly trading out the colorful monsters and toy factories for Skibbity Toilet or the Amazing Digital Circus for some reason. In short, we have a problem here, but I can't exactly put my finger on as to what it could be. Okay, that makes sense. No matter what way you put it, the problem is undoubtedly oversaturation. Where there was once a genuine market absence during the hiatus of Poppy Playtime, too many things at once attempted to take a piece of that sweet mascot horror pie, ultimately leading to too much being taken and interest being lost. With this dwindling interest, the one that started it all is now the only thing left to pick up the scraps of this once titan of the online community. The buzz around this game leading up to its release was pretty big. Trailers releasing for this thing months upon months apart, with it originally scheduled to come out late last year, but being pushed to early this year. As we got more teasers and drip marketing fed more information about this project, it started to become more clear that this game was an attempt to change the reputation of Poppy Playtime for good. Gone are the days of official Huggy Wuggy Minecraft animations, Enchanted Mob not having uploaded anything Poppy related for more than a year now. Priorities changed, and a lot of the criticisms I gave the series at its start seem to have been addressed as time went on. All of this amounting to Chapter 3 looking a lot more dark and mature than anything that has come before, making not just myself, but a lot of people who were originally critical of Mob Entertainment's work genuinely pretty excited for this upcoming installment, with the introduction of a new character cast of the Smiling Critters and new antagonist Catnap. I see Poppy Playtime 3 as the final send-off to this era of mascot horror. Even if the genre is likely not going to go away anytime soon, things are really going to need to change for any of these games to stick around in the ways they have so far. And with all of that at stake, let's see if 1.5 years was enough to end this era of indie horror on a high note. This is Poppy Playtime Chapter 3, the end of mascot horror. Well, as we know it at least. But first... Hello, it's me, 3D Scarfy Warfy here. After my last appearance, I switched dimensions and I've gotten closer to entering the corporeal realm thanks to GamerSupps. As some of you may know, GamerSupps is now a full-time partner of the channel, and I couldn't be happier about it, being what I consider the best powder-based energy drink currently on the market. I've been exposed to GamerSupps for a good 2 months now, and it has become my go-to source of focused energy whenever I need the extra boost for whatever activity I'm getting ready for. This is also the only energy company where you can buy a tub of Sigma Brain. They're sugar-free too, meaning that you won't feel like this gif of Chuck from Better Call Saul fainting repeatedly after consuming them. Unlike a lot of other sugar-free drinks too, this one doesn't really have the weird aftertaste you get after drinking. Not something I was told to say, but definitely an observation I noticed. Click my link in the description or the pinned comment and you will not only support me, but also get a whole 10% off your first purchase. And trust me, You're gonna need something to keep you energized when this thing starts spewing its sleeping gas everywhere. So use my code to ensure that you have proper defenses against catnap. Once again, thank you to GamerSupps for sponsoring this video. And by the next time you see me, I may just be real. You better prepare. Right away, the core threat and antagonist of this chapter is shown off to us directly, with Catnap presumably picking us up after the train crash of the last chapter, and throwing us down a garbage disposal, meaning to be crushed. Thankfully, there's a pretty easy escape option here, and we enter a room with a ton of hydraulic presses, which is the scariest room in the game. As silly as it sounds, these things would be horrific in real life, dude. Like, have you ever seen a hydraulic press? Those things will stop for absolutely nothing. It's terrifying. A thing I really like about the setup here is that this chapter wastes no time into introducing gimmicks from previous chapters right to you and expecting you to already know what to do. It's been a while since the last Poppy outing, and they absolutely could have thrown a slower paced tutorial for everything if they wanted to, but getting right into the action of everything makes me feel like this series has matured a lot since the first installment. The animations and environments have clearly had a huge step up in quality too. I particularly like the new crouch animation introduced in this game. It's small details like this, but ones that are very noticeable to me at least, and things I can certainly appreciate. I believe the thing that makes the best out of the Mascot horror genre are the memorable environments and set pieces done within the games, and this game so far has met expectations, but we'll continue to see they'll also certainly surpass them. It's here too that you notice hints that your threat is constantly with you. Noticing once more, as tradition for this series so far, these little details continue to be some of my favorite mob entertainment gives us. For all the faults of the previous chapters, the attention to detail they put into Huggy Wuggy and Mommy Longlegs following behind you before fully revealing themselves is something that I believe makes these games stand out a lot more compared to the competition. But, of course, with all the improvement, some fundamental things seem like they'll never change.
I'm Bubba Bubbaphant. Hey, I remember you. An elephant always remembers. Want to know what I remember about you?
These cutouts are really funny. I'm sorry. All of them are structured the exact same. Set up the character. After, like, the second button press, it starts getting more spooky, and then, of course... I just noticed this right now, but why did I got my bro doing the cartoon reviewer pose? These feel like the only thing that was intended to be scary in the game that kind of falls flat and are just comedic. Previous chapters have also had these same cardboard cutouts surrounding the area, but very few of them had intentionally scary dialogue like these ones. Like, imagine if in the previous chapters the progression of the cutouts speaking went like this. A few rooms later, we're introduced to a new puzzle gimmick that will be prevalent throughout the rest of this chapter, and the introduction of a new character guiding us throughout this level of the facility.
Hey, can you hear me? You look kinda lost.
They don't tell us their name just yet, but they help us get to a very important tram, which leads us to quite possibly one of the most grand-feeling introductions to any Mascot horror game.
Hello. My name is Elliot Ludwig. When you look around at the world today, what one thing do you think it needs more? Money. I never have enough, and man has lost it. Each answer was different, but I think each was also missing something. Not one of them could muster a smile. That is why it is with enormous pleasure that as the founder of Playtime Co., I announce... Playcare, our very own on-site orphanage.
A big problem I had with the last two installments is that they felt way too similar to each other. Poppy Playtime 2 just felt like a longer version of the first chapter, and honestly, both of them together feel more like a complete chapter than they are apart. But as soon as I saw this new area, I knew this was not going to be the case this time. Playcare alone tells you that this is going to be very different to what had come before. This toy factory aesthetic that Poppy started had essentially gotten hijacked by so many the other Mascot horror games, in the same vein that it has become incredibly tiresome to look at. Playcare, this underground orphanage area, does something completely different, and it is so refreshing to see. Everything from the town's dome structure, and especially the artificial sky, make the storytelling of this environment so eerie and interesting. Like, knowing that this was meant to be an orphanage, this is likely the only form of sunlight any of these kids living down here had ever seen. You can imagine how bustling this environment could have been in its prime, but the vacancy of this facility doesn't feel too over the top, almost as if someone or something has been taking care of it since its closure. Arriving here, we finally learn the name of our companion, being Ollie. He's a really funny character. He talks like a child actor trying to learn how to read lines for the first time, and it's really endearing.
So, you got the key. Now the question you're probably asking yourself is, where does it go?
Yeah, but
Well,
no shit,
get back
Ollie.
out.
Our goal this chapter is to allocate gas that's piling up in this area here from the right to the left to progress forward. In our process of doing this, we are introduced to a new gimmick for puzzle solving. With this purple hand, we can stand under these situational platforms and launch ourselves to heights that we couldn't reach previously. The demonstration they give us is really funny though, because they have a tutorial video on how to use it once it gets picked up, telling us that not all falls are safe, but the demonstration they give is a fucking spike pit. I get that this is probably meant to be hyperbole, but Elliot Ludwig really got us using a children's toy to allocate power in a facility every damn place we walk. Him just building friggin' spike traps does not seem like it would be out of the question for this man. We do some more puzzles to finally allocate the gas from the right to the left. But since we still have 2 hours of playtime and 11 more pages, this is obviously not going to be that easy. With the power off, Ollie guides us to the direction of another place we need to allocate power in. Yeah, we do that a lot in this game. Anyways, our new goal is to take the power from the housing area of the facility, Home Sweet Home, and reroute it to the greater facility. From the moment I stepped foot into this environment, I knew things were about to get real. So, an environment like this is strangely not alien to the series, but actually having a whole area dedicated to this creepy haunted mansion aesthetic is such a killer setting for the theme of evil toys. You go to several different environments throughout this game, and unlike previous chapters, no one environment feels too similar from the last. And having this, the most distinct environment from the familiar aesthetic we're all used to, makes everything that'll happen here feel so much more frightening and unfamiliar. Though, with that being said, we enter into a room filled with the gas that we are warned about, and with no other option, we plunge right into it. After this, the geometry of the location gets very warped. Abnormally long staircases and hallways form all around us. Old recordings of deaths involving Playtime Co. are echoed all throughout various radios as we walk by. And we also witness possibly the most notable thing.
You need to run.
Despite him being the main antagonist for this chapter, Catnap has not been very prevalent up until this point, with only a few scenes at the beginning showing his existence. This section really helps us set up what his deal is going to be throughout our entire time playing this game. Catnap doesn't work like either monster we faced up against previously, and his introduction here already tells us a lot about how different he is going to be compared to Huggy Wuggy or Mommy previously. And although I'd like to explain more how this scene heightens his fear factor, I saw him staring at me from down the hallway and Alt F4'd the game. If only someone could talk about this section for me so the spooky Catnap doesn't eat me.
I've been clowning on Catnap as a character a lot lately, mainly because of his goofy design and lovable plush form, so much so that I often forget just how terrifyingly effective of an antagonist he truly is. At least much more so than Mommy Longlegs or Huggy Wuggy were in the chapters beforehand. Unlike the other characters being introduced properly in monster form later in the chapter, Catnap's monster form is quite literally the first thing we see after the opening cutscene, as he drags us and traps us in a room meant to crush us alive. The player immediately understands that this character character will be the main antagonist, something recognized yet again as we see glimpses of Catnap throughout his entire beginning section. He doesn't have much time to shine again until the Home Sweet Home section, a segment which, in my opinion, is the most horrifying part of this game. As Dags mentioned before, this area is extremely twisted, made up of stretched out hallways and a massive map design specifically to confuse the player.
I guess you could say that it's part of the design.
In case it wasn't obvious by the insanity of this area accompanied with impossible structure of the surroundings, and the fact that the madness only begins after we step foot into Catnap's pre-established sleeping gas. This entire section of the game is a hallucination or nightmare of sorts. Going off of the assumption that our character falls asleep in the sleeping gas, and the first thing they do is have a terrifying nightmare predominantly featuring this monstrous entity, establishes that in canon our character is horrified of Catnap. Even if we as the player don't find him scary, the game purposefully presents him as being terrifying to our character, to the point where we continuously hallucinate him in every corner of our eye. When we finally find a room that is different from the long hallways and corridors we explored previously, we receive a phone call from Ollie, who, upon the player picking up the phone, tells us we need to run. When we turn back to go outside, Catnap is there, peeking out through the corner and staring at us menacingly before turning back as soon as we get a good look at him. When we go out of the room, he's nowhere to be found, however there are claw marks everywhere in this atmosphere. On the walls, the floors, the claw marks often even spell out cryptic messages in writing. Catnap makes another appearance in this hallucination sequence at the end of a dark hallway, hardly even visible, staring you down. And when I mean staring you down, I mean it. A lot of people don't know this, but this specific Catnap model has tracking that makes his head turn based on where the player is located, meaning he is quite literally always staring at you, watching at every moment. Even when you're not near him and the model is hidden in an area where the player cannot see him, he's still watching, waiting, following your every move. Even after this section when your character is of sound mind and no longer asleep or hallucinating, Catnap is constantly walking around so quietly that it is insanely easy to miss him. This, accompanied with his desaturated design, and the fact that he's known to watch you almost out of sight, gives the player an irrational fear of him being around every other corner. A fear that I experienced myself playing through the game for the first time. Catnap is verbally described by Ollie to be a stalker who lives for the hunt, stalking his prey first, taking away its defenses and killing it at its most vulnerable. Catnap has been stalking us throughout the game so far, and will only continue to do so, which puts us on edge as we have yet to see him make an actual move on us. I believe this approach to be infinitely more effective than both Huggy Wuggy and Mommy Longlegs combined. Jesus Christ, I sound so fucking stupid saying that. As Huggy kind of only rushes at us at the very end of chapter 1, whereas Mommy, being with us throughout the entire chapter and having very suspicious dialogue,
Mommy knows other ways to play with you,
ruins all the fear factor I could have gotten from her. It also doesn't help that Catnap has an amazing segment towards the end, but I guess I'll leave that to Dags to talk about. Speaking of him, you good, buddy? Oh, thank goodness you're okay. I'm running extremely late to a meeting. I'm in charge of deciding the newest mechanism that we're gonna be installing in Playtime Co.'s factory.
Alright, thank God I don't have to deal with the cat thing. For now, at least. This area is about to come to its climax as we approach a room at the end of a dim hallway. A room that looks very noticeably different from the rest that we have seen throughout our time in Home Sweet Home. On our way there, we can hear the halls echoing children's cries, almost alluding to this place being the final resting area of several souls after some incident. We finally make our way inside to a room that almost looks like an infirmary, likely meant to treat the sick kids of this facility. Finding a VHS tape in this room, we can plug it into this TV here, leading to analog horror Huggy Wuggy showing up. I think this scene is really funny and kind of on par with the smiling critter cardboard cutouts, but despite this scene gets progressively better as time goes on. The audio played here seems to start off as an employee training tape, but slowly turns more sinister, with the narrator directly talking to us as Huggy's face becomes more lay analog. Our eyes are forced to be trained to the screen, as it gets harder to look away, a detail that really took me by surprise my first time playing, and I feel really heightens the fear factor here. But this is ultimately leading up to something, and what happened was not really what I expected.
A world that's theirs now. Welcome home.
Now, I've seen a lot of people make fun of this design, and I can somewhat understand the criticisms, but I think right here it works. Huggy coming out of the TV is genuinely one of the best animated things Mob has made thus far. And this scene, although not the most frightening, completely makes up for it in the spectacle that it provides. Experiencing this the first time, debating whether or not he would show up from behind the closed curtains, or if they would truly have the bravery to execute a scene of him coming out of the TV itself, was a true highlight of this chapter, and I believe a highlight for Mascot horror as a medium in general. Waking up after the Huggy chase, we're transported back to reality, and the true danger of the nightmare gas is made abundantly clear to us now. Our goal is not lost on us, however, as we still need to find a way to allocate power from here to the rest of the facility. And once again, I need to say hats off to the environment here, Mob Entertainment. The grand hallway with several floors opposed to the long and narrow hallways of the nightmare sequence makes you feel like you were transported from PT to Resident Evil in the best way possible. The sphere with Catnap's moon in the sky and the main hall makes this area feel all the more grand and imposing with how vacant everything looks. This portion of the game is entirely reliant on puzzle solving, which isn't awful, but personally, I wish there was a little bit more going on here. Home Sweet Home, after the nightmare sequence, is almost all atmosphere and no tension of anything actually happening to you. There's no threat to avoid or real danger in this portion of the game, and although this is certainly something that will be corrected later, I feel that making this area completely devoid of danger was a little bit of a missed opportunity, but I can still somewhat give it a pass, as this is still the first major environment of the game. In here, we're also introduced to another really important mechanic, the gas mask, and I'm gonna spend a minute ranting about this thing because I fucking love gas masks, and the model here might actually be important to the story. Yes, please bear with me. My favorite detail about the gas mask is that it's literally a PNG that slides down over the player's peripheral vision. Like, this looks like an animation Scott Cawthon would make. You can absolutely tell that this was something that they made super early in development and never really bothered updating. Like, you could literally see the lines where they cut out the PNG. It's just really funny when compared to everything else in this game, which has a really high standard of quality. The gas mask's function is simple, only needing to have it on when you need to traverse through Catnap smoke. But the design of the mask itself is very interesting to me. Although the mask itself is fictional, it is undeniably heavily based off the CT-12 NBC respirator, a modified version of the S10 gas mask, which I own myself, funnily enough. These things were in circulation since the mid-80s, which makes sense for the time period these masks would have been being used in. The Poppy mask, featuring Avon's iconic speech module on the front, present in almost all Avon branded gas masks. It's very possible Playtime Co. could have commissioned these masks in particular that have a second respirator specifically to deal with Catnap's gas, which I personally think is really cool, as the time period these would have been being used in completely aligns with the gear that would have been used in the real world. But anyways, I know like only 2 people care about this, but whatever. Bet no other video essayist went this much into detail about the gas mask. The goal here is to allocate enough power to this door in the center of the room. To do this, we do a myriad of puzzles around the facility, most of them involving these green buttons we need to charge. I'm gonna be honest here, I was pretty stumped at a lot of these puzzles on my first go around. Although doing them now isn't rocket science, my first attempt at a lot of these left me pretty confused, and will likely leave the target audience of this game even more confused. Whatever kid is going to be able to do this without a guide needs to be put into Harvard, I swear to God, like only young Sheldon would be able to do this. Although the puzzles here can be difficult or, you know, puzzling, I am happy that they aren't nearly as mind-numbing as some older ones, and put a lot of trust in the player to take in their surroundings to actually progress forward. It's also in this progression we learn we're not alone. We gotta find 2 batteries to open this gate here in order to progress, but in our attempt to do this, we see another face here. Is she like watching Skibbity Toilet or something? I don't really know why Kissy Missy is here, but she's silly, so I give her a pass. She doesn't do anything other than just look at this portrait she's holding, but whatever. After opening this door, more of the second floor is opened up to us, where we need to find more batteries, one of which being powered by this really unnerving statue of Bobby Bearhug, who follows you around everywhere you look. You need to get out of its direct line of sight in order to grab this one. Heading further down, we make it to a new area area where we almost complete the puzzle. This is made known to us by the song that is played in this area, which I need to say is absolutely chilling. One thing that I also had a criticism for Poppy Playtime initially was the music. A lot of it sounding like lay spooky analog caretaker, which really felt overdone by that point. But the music played here sounds so much more haunting and fitting with the setting that we're currently in. This song is called Don't Wake the Angels, and really hammers in the setting we're in. Whatever happened to the orphans in this facility, it is made abundantly clear to us time and time again that they haven't left in one way or another. And thinking of all the possibilities of how they're still here is, well, more than chilling, to say the least. We wrap things up in Home Sweet Home and head forward in our pursuit to allocate power. We're also introduced to these little grab pack turret things, which act as a permanent way to turn on one of these pillars while being able to do other things in the process. The puzzles here are still fairly simple, even if I was stuck here for like an hour on my first time because I didn't know to grab this fucking bridge blocker, but that's besides the point. We finally allocate all the power we need and we escape through the maintenance tunnel back to the surface. Making our way back to the lobby, Skibidi Toilet's strongest soldier comes in and gets ready to kill us, but fortunately we're saved by this ugly bitch. Poppy and Kissy Missy reunite with us once again, and come with us to turn the power back on. Poppy monologues about the prototype and why we need to stop him for a bit, and then just ascends back to the top. Okay.
Can't stay here. Keep yourself safe.
Bitch, what did you say to me? After turning the dome's backup power on, Ollie tells us we need to restore power to the gas production zone. Rerouting the power from Home Sweet Home to there, we still need more energy. So Ollie sends us into the school, likely to encounter another threat. The school environment is the most familiar to what we have seen before, but it still feels incredibly fresh when compared to the old factory settings. Schools as horror environments are something I feel are generally very underutilized in games like this. If you've ever walked around your school after hours, you'd understand how bizarre the feeling could be. A lot of the puzzle principles from Home Sweet Home carry on from over here, but on your way, you see a lot of strange notes left by presumably a former teacher. Just a few weeks ago now was the hour of joy. Today, there is silence in the school. I don't think any of us here know what to do with it. The hallways without the children carry even the smallest of sounds as if they were shouts. The other teachers and I startle each other constantly. We'll get used to it. Something locked the front door this morning. We hadn't been able to open it. Quickly after reading this note, an intercom speech is briefly spoken throughout the halls.
This is Miss Delight speaking. Please excuse the interruption. Students, remain in your seat until the bell has rung. And no going in the halls without a hall pass.
As of right now, it's unknown if this message is just pre-recorded or if we are being talked to directly. Writing off this message for now, we get the necessary batteries needed to progress forward, and on our way, we find another note. I heard a knock at the door today. I heard it breathing. Whatever it was, it wouldn't speak being called out to. I spent hours after it went silent wondering if this is what locked us in here. I've made a weapon of sorts, pencils and rulers and tape and twine. I've taken to calling it Barb. It's crude, but if that door opens, I need to be ready. I think it's becoming more clear who is leaving these notes behind now. We hear another announcement on the intercom from this teacher directly confirming that she's talking directly to us.
Wait, I recognize you. Yes, I remember. You used to work here. How are you? Alive. Barb? Oh. Barb says you're looking for your co-workers. Catnap wouldn't like that you're here. You should leave. For your own safety.
Mentioning Barb once more, and revealing that she is related to Catnap in some way. Grabbing the second battery we need and heading back, we stumble across another note. No food for days. The others argued with me over what was left. They started glaring. judging. They blocked the kitchen doorway with their bodies. I think they singled me out to die first. Plugging in the final battery we need, we venture into the school. Miss Delight is able to be spotted everywhere we walk. The notes that we find from this point forward become more deranged and frantic, as it becomes more clear to us that the hunger made her go mad, playing dead to lure in unsuspecting teachers, presumably eating them. See guys, she's not evil, she's just hungry. Miss Delight continues to taunt us through the intercom, now making it abundantly clear that she does not have good intentions with us. We finally get to the final room. We need to power this generator so we can get out of here, but on our way, we find a cutout of Miss Delight, who gives us a chilling reminder that she is incredibly knowledgeable of human anatomy.
The smallest bone in your body is the stapes in your ear. Still, damage it, and you risk losing your hearing. Want to learn more about human organs? Pay close attention in class.
I know I've poked fun at a lot of the cutouts so far in this game, but this one is without a doubt the best executed one. It's unnerving because it's not meant to be, but the reminder that her extensive knowledge as a teacher likely includes knowing where the most fragile parts in our body are is an amazing way to imply how deadly she may be if encountered. Though the cutout was certainly a warning, as turning the power back on has this happen. Everything that led up to this moment was a warning. The notes saying that she'd play dead, to the more overt and obvious ones like wondering what our screams sounded like. But much like every other antagonist residing in Playtime Co., Miss Delight is a hunter, with a very different style of hunting than any other character we've encountered thus far. Now, weeping angel enemies are certainly not the most unique thing to find in a video game, but somehow this game has introduced quite possibly my favorite take on this trope. Miss Delight doesn't just teleport to you or instantly kill you if she gets too close. You can see her delayed steps towards you as you turn around. This is the only way she has learned how to hunt. This is what she conditioned herself to do. And writing in an explanation as to why this is her hunting style makes the world here feel so much more fleshed out and thought over than previous chapters. Our goal now is to plug in several batteries into these gates and make a break for it to the exit. And hope we don't get caught too close behind this gnarly teacher. Miss Delight's design is one that will likely be shrouded in darkness from most angles, but if you catch her in the light, you'll see shards of porcelain and broken glass all around her face, revealing gory, exposed innards inside of her, which is also highlighted in her jump scare as well. We make our way back towards the dark hallways, twisting and turning through every gate we need to open, hearing her footsteps catch up to us further away as we get out of her sight. Finally getting to this office room of sorts, we need to time our button inserts in order to finally leave this nightmare school. In one more desperate attempt to get us, Miss Delight gives up her entire hunting strategy and makes a break towards you, though this doesn't particularly work out for her. I feel like out there in the world, a particular orange fellow is distraught over this occurrence. We make it out of the school, but not through the entrance we came from. Instead, preparing to go through more maintenance tunnels, we find one more note from Miss Delight. The door opened today, and I heard something enter my hall. Together, Barb and I found Catnap. All this time, all of this agony, it was he who locked the door. I know it. I wanted to kill him, but I knew better than to believe I could. He seemed oddly glad I was all that remained. We made a deal. We take care of each other now. Report what we see to the other. And to him. That him at the end likely referring to the prototype. Miss Delight is one of the more tragic characters we encounter in the depths of Playcare. Although every character is tragic in a way, it is rare that we see the results of that tragedy put directly into our face like it was here. And despite being an antagonist who fluently talks to us, she still kept her intimidation factor that I believe was very noticeably absent for Mommy Longlegs last chapter. It was genius to keep everything about this character a secret before before the game had come out, and the payoff of her inclusion made for what is likely the most tense scene in the entire game. If we load back into the room where she was crushed, we can see that her body is not there anymore. The implications as to why could vary, but I highly doubt it's because she survived. But anyways, to hell with her, we have a gun now. The flare gun is the third and final unique hand given to us this chapter. As we can see, it fills up the last spot needed in our inventory. We don't know the full potential of its use as of right now, but we can use it as a temporary light source since the flashlight we previously had kind of just like burnt out for no reason. We continue down more maintenance tunnels that were built in this vast cave around the dome. And I gotta say, I really dig these intermission environments. They heavily remind me of the underground in Portal 2, and though the puzzles here may not be nearly as complex, they at least make for a really interesting natural backdrop, which is also something relatively new for this series. We do some more simple tether puzzles to progress to wherever we may be going, but on our way there, we spot a cat on the catwalk. Catnap stands before this frightening shrine out of our sight. It's borderline incomprehensible, made of amalgam toys and human remains. This is later told to us to be a shrine Catnap made for the prototype, but when I first played, I thought this could have just been the prototype at first, which I'm glad it isn't because this would have been a very unceremonious reveal. Going to the end of the catwalk, we entered the entrance of the playhouse, an area that we didn't have general access to until now. It's also here that we... This is my favorite thing in any video game of all time. This section has us trying to power on this mechanism in the middle of this room to progress forward into the playhouse. But on our way there, we keep getting bombarded by these little smiling critter dolls who kill us when being caught. And the solution to this problem is just busting a cap right into their faces. We don't just get to use the flare gun as an alternate light source, but also as a weapon against these little guys. The environment itself here can make them feel slightly intimidating in some instances, but I sincerely cannot get scared at how these guys fly around after being shot. But I mean that in the most positive way possible. I love these things. I don't really have much else to say about them, so we can continue into the playhouse as normal. Finally escaping the wrath of those critters, we make our way into a pool, but there really isn't much to see here. Though, a door leads us to a very ominous looking area, one that leads us to meet a rather frightening face.
You're Pappy's angel. Come to save us. Nothing left to save. Not here. Not Catnap's home angel.
Dog Day, the last of the smiling critters, chained up and left to be tortured by Catnap for the rest of his days. Now, after what Mob was willing to show in previous chapters, I had a set expectation for what was and what wasn't able to be depicted in this series. Then suddenly, out of complete nowhere, we stumble into this room and happen upon a crucified heretic whose body is quite literally falling apart. Not long after we find him too, suddenly he's eaten alive from the inside and puppeted by a bunch of little critters that use his husk to hunt us down. Not only did this moment stand out to me so greatly for the gruesome subject matter it tackles, as well as the tense chase through the playhouse, but the actual setup to it was some of the best foreshadowing I have seen from any indie horror game in a long time. Going through chapter 3, we see so much imagery relating to the smiling critters in Dog Day, which for the most part is fairly innocent aside from the few screams of the damned. But what really caught my interest after completing this sequence was any artwork that related to Dog Day. In every piece of art that features the character, he can be seen in the same excited, celebratory pose. Something that on a first-time playthrough doesn't arouse any suspicion. Upon completing his chase, however, suddenly these art pieces are revealed to have a much more sinister intention behind them. Hell, even the cartoon that starts the chapter has this exact same foreshadowing subtly introduced. introduced, with Dog Day being seen at the end in the exact same pose, even having his legs covered by a blanket. The foreshadowing and brutal execution of this moment made it stand out to me more than any other sequence of horror we have seen from the Mascot horror genre. I would have never thought Poppy Playtime of all things would have been the one to take it here, but alas, it did, and I am all here for it. I kept this section very brief because my buddy Posturespect recently made a really comprehensive video on just this scene alone, so if this topic in particular interests you, I recommend checking that out after this video. We make our way back to the surface after our extended time away from the hub in the Playcare, which has changed its scenery from a bright sunny sky to an almost somber and conclusive sunset. This is honestly a detail I really overshadowed in my first playthrough of the game, but it is an incredibly effective change of theme that really sets in that our journey down here is reaching its climax very soon. Ollie calls us again and proceeds to deliver one of my favorite pieces of dialogue in the game.
Hey, are you alright? No ouchies or lost body parts?
He has an extended talk with us and mentions how he likely saw the shrine at the entrance of the playhouse. And I can't lie, this dialogue here is a little suspicious on Ollie's end. Framing the prototype as a superhero that saved Catnap before some tragic accident happened. Ollie goes further with his knowledge of Catnap, telling us he lives for the hunt and stalks his prey. Again, something very peculiar for Ollie to know offhand, and puts into question if his character is truly genuine. He then guides us to allocate power from the counselor's office, the last location we haven't thoroughly explored. Getting sent the key, we make our way into the entrance of the facility. Like everything else down here, this environment is very distinct when paired with everywhere else we've explored, feeling a lot more professional and clean than a lot of the other places down here. Though I can put clean in very big quotations, as this is undeniably the most gas-infected area in all of Playcare, needing to use your mask in several rooms that we traverse here. I'm honestly really glad they structured this one like this because it actually feels like it gives the gas mask more of a purpose. The gas mask is really cool, but it's something that you don't really need to use much. So I'm glad this portion of the game has you using it a little bit more than usual. Our progression throughout here is simple, almost like the school, but no visible threat made out to us just yet. Well, at least it's made clear that we're not alone. We make our way further into the counselor's office, where it's clear that more gruesome events also went down in this building, much like the rest of Playcare. We cut through another maintenance cave and do a quick puzzle there. Not much else to comment about this section, just what you'd expect out of the puzzles in this chapter. We cut our way through the main offices of the building, shuffling through steep desks and traversing through more rooms. We pass through a hallway with a crafty corn cutout, which probably has the funniest dialogue out of all of these. I know I haven't really commented on every single cutout, but this one really stands out for me. I really like how it just cuts itself off. I don't even need to do that this time. Anyways, after entering event, we finally get to the destination we needed to get to earlier. This room is completely engulfed with the gas. Ominous music plays as we look for every battery needed to be plugged in this area to open the next door. We get to another one of these jungle gym puzzles that once again we're all too familiar with by now. Although I will say the platforming they have us do here is a pretty fun use of the purple hand. There's also this notorious glitch here where the battery we need will just sometimes balloon in size for absolutely no reason. We love you, Big Battery. After allocating all the power of this area, we make our way into a vent and out back into the entrance of the counselor's office, the building now being completely submerged in gas. We attempt to make our way out of the facility, but before we can... Being completely submerged in the gas, we have faint visions on what we're doing here. What happened to our former coworkers. Although still not explicitly stated as to what, some sort of incident did happen here. And in the middle of it all is one figure. we're not done yet. The sun has set in Playcare. Ollie gives us one last task to reach 100% power. Rerouting the power into the statue, we are almost done. Ollie sends us another big battery, and Mob Games didn't even bother trying to explain how this battery came from this little tube, so they just spawn it in front. Okay. That aside, this is the moment we've been waiting for. Finally getting what we need to move the gas, we head back into its production zone and get ready to change the direction. But of course, it's never that easy. Catnap isn't going to let us rest. It's time for the hunt to begin. Twisting and malforming himself, he emerges from the gas, altering his appearance in any way to put the ever-loving fear into the player. Even if we aren't scared of what's going on now, it is made clear that our protagonist is terrified, dropping the battery at the mere sight of this thing. We're brought up to a new facility, one where Catnap is getting ready for us. If you were expecting this chapter to end with a chase scene that we're all used to, you will be sorely mistaken. We are placed into a sit and survive themed final boss against the monster Catnap, having to use our defenses and quick thinking as a terminal in front of the room recharges. A lot of people point to several other scenes in this game as the thing that won them over as a fan of this series. This one is mine. It's pretty clear as to what this area is trying to pay homage to, but this time being done in a 3D environment. And I can't lie, Mob Games, you did a better job than the bear at translating this style of boss fight into a 3D environment. Everything about this boss fight feels excellently crafted. Catnap's presence is felt everywhere, not giving you a minute to breathe or even feel the slightest bit of comfort as it continues to progress towards you. No matter what context I play this scene in, no matter how well I understand the mechanics, this moment of the game will never stop me from feeling my own heartbeat. Despite this, everything laid out to you still feels understandable, unlike another game that had a similar ending to this one. Unlike that game too, you don't have the chance to die after being locked into the ending cutscene. Speaking of which, bang! Completely succumbing to the prototype, Catnap gives into its execution with no hesitation. The relationship between Catnap and the prototype is absolutely chilling, especially when the last toy to acknowledge its existence begged and pleaded for us not to let them become a part of it. This being, this thing, whatever the prototype is truly a savior in Catnap's eyes. And if all the dialogue didn't lead us to know how heavenly Catnap sees this being, the lighting and framing of this section absolutely does all it needs for you to understand. While on the topic of the prototype, there is a VHS tape here for us to listen to, given the option. I avoided talking about most of the other VHS tapes that you can find throughout this chapter previously, but this one is without a doubt the most important one you can find. It's an interview between a Playtime co-employee and Experiment 1006. The prototype. In this tape, we are given the reveal that the prototype has the ability to mimic voices.
Thank me. Absolutely. I learn something new about you every day.
Yes, I know, and I truly believe this was a coincidence, but that still doesn't mean it's not a little funny. This little piece of world building is what I personally believe puts Ollie's inclusion in this plot highly into question. Even if there were survivors to whatever event happened down here, it was clearly something that was a long enough time back for Ollie to have grown further than being a little boy. With the prototype being implied to be behind us at every given moment in this chapter, I feel like we have not been killed by him because we have been doing its work for it the entire time. We make our way back to the entrance of the gas production zone and finally allocate the power to the left side of the facility. You know, if the power didn't go all the way back, we would have gotten this done like 12 pages ago. The lights turn back on and we make our way into the final room of this game, but not before we hear a familiar voice talk to us through the vents.
Good, you're here. And you've done it again. The impossible.
Poppy congratulates us, and as a reward, we're finally able to find out what truly happened to our coworkers. This was something that was teased and written all throughout the walls in this game, but it was never explicitly told or said what exactly it was. But now, we get to see it happen with our own eyes. slaughter, destruction, and chaos. Nobody was spared from the onslaught of death that arose on that day. No worker, visitor, or even child was spared from the wrath of this nightmare that took place on this day. An incident being alluded to have happened like this in a Mascot horror game isn't too uncommon, but again, Mob Entertainment actually having the balls to show this clear as day to us, even if through a grainy VHS tape, is something to be applauded for something that has become so linked to children's media. After Poppy's monologue, we get ready to descend even further down into Playtime Co. This ending giving very similar vibes to you know what, but hey, I won't mention it. Kissy holds the elevator down as we prepare to find out what waits for us below, but unfortunately, that doesn't work all out for her.
Once we hit the ground, we need to be cautious. There's something... What? What's she doing? No! No! We're coming! Just hold on! Come on, go faster! Kissy!
I swear to God, Mob Entertainment, if she is not okay by the next chapter, I am going to fucking riot. Man, what a freaking ride. Poppy Playtime Chapter 3 officially holds the title of the best Mascot horror game I've ever played. Not only for its sheer quality, but also for what it represents. It's no secret that I've been critical of this genre for a really long time, and this type of media being my main topic of discussion for 2 years now. And ever since Poppy Playtime, we had kind of been thrown into a whole new era of this genre, having what I believe its all-time peak at the middle point of last year. But as time went on, we had this genre degrade more and more into being widely known as the game characters that would be exploited by YouTube channels we would go on to label as content farms. It felt like a game after a game in this genre, we would see the reputation of this medium of horror be further exploited and degraded with every person that would try to get their hands on it, with Poppy Playtime being the patient zero of this modern epidemic. All the way back to the first chapter, it felt like this whole series was built off the idea to be a soulless husk, meant to be as marketable to children as possible, with Minecraft animations and YouTuber reaction bait plastered everywhere in the experience. But thankfully, I can now say with utmost sincerity, this is not the direction Mob Entertainment wants to take this property any longer. I believe that this game is going to cause a ripple. With every passing day, Mascot horror becomes less and less popular to the crowd that gives it the most money, the children. Ban content farms are dropping drastically in views. Its contemporaries not getting much limelight anymore either. There hasn't been any new games that have come and captured the same level of popularity since early last year. In short, the meta is kinda over. But this game may change that. It's possible that this game can single-handedly throw us into a whole new era of Mascot horror. Poppy 3 has already been dominating the YouTube meta, and although some are falling back into old habits, others are giving this medium of horror and video games a second chance. Mascot horror may not be going away anytime soon, but with this game being the latest influence, maybe be a bit optimistic about whatever will be brought our way again very soon. In conclusion, a new Ban trailer dropped literally as I am writing this. You know what time it is. I've been Dags, and until next time, see ya.
This is not gonna be real, is it? Why do I have a funny feeling the Ku Klux Klan is gonna pop out any